In 1994, the United States Justice Department directed the Federal Bureau of Investigation to establish a special unit in response to terrorist activities, hostage takings, international crime, and other high-risk violent acts. This unit is called the Critical Incident Response Group, or CIRG, working in conjunction with state, local, and international law enforcement. CIRG's primary mission is to investigate and resolve critical incidents that threaten public safety whenever and wherever they occur. These are their stories. Monday, December 13th, is another typical day in St. Martinsville, a small town in southern Louisiana, where life revolves around a Cajun heritage of family and religion dating back over 200 years. It is a close-knit community, aware of itself, but a place where the world's problems rarely intrude. Near the center of town is the St. Martinsville Parish Correctional Center, where 166 prisoners are confined for crimes ranging from murder to petty theft. Included in this group are over 24 federal prisoners detained by the Immigration and Naturalization Service. On the second floor of the jail, the day shift is ending. Prisoners are being returned to their cells in preparation for dinner. In another hour, the guards will go home for the night. Everything seems routine. The warden of the St. Martin Parish Correctional Center is Todd Louviere. Back at work after a 2-week vacation, he is finishing up work after a long day. Suddenly, the warden witnesses a guard screaming and shouting in the hallway.
She had her hands up in the air, hollering and screaming, crying, and I didn't know what was going on. People were running around all over. It was very chaotic.
Look, I got prisoners running loose up here. I got deputies screaming. Get me some people up here now.
Fighting for his life, the warden is about to become a prisoner in his own jail, and St. Martinville will be ground zero in a life-and-death hostage situation that would grow into an international crisis. As he looks into the faces of his captors, Todd Louviere knows only one thing is certain: his vacation is over.
Get your feet, man. Get his feet.
Though Warden Louviere can't see what's happening outside his office, he realizes the prisoners have planned their attack carefully.
They wanted control of me since I was the warden, and that's how they were gonna make their presentation to get what they wanted.
In capturing the prison's control room, the attackers now command the access to the prison's 3 cell blocks located on the 2nd floor. More importantly, they hold 4 hostages. Downstairs, within minutes after the warden's call, the SWAT team begins to arrive. Despite the urgency of the situation, their preparation remains calm and deliberate. But Sheriff Charles Fusilier faces an immediate situation. If the prisoners gain control of the main door in the 2nd floor hallway, the jail will be sealed off. The sheriff is in danger of losing the prison.
If we would have lost control of that door, we would have lost control of the whole jail, because there was no way to gain entrance into that jail. And that's why that door was very important. When we built the jail, we never assumed that we were going to have to attack our own jail.
Upstairs, the inmates understand the importance of the door as well.
I was the first one to open the door, and one of them came at me with a chair.
The takeover is less than 25 minutes old. As the SWAT team assembles and briefs before they enter the building, the information on the situation is superficial. They know only that the inmates have taken the warden hostage.
Todd is a hostage in the warden's office.
The SWAT commander follows standing orders, seal off the jail. The sheriff is on his own. As the sheriff struggles with the first inmate to keep from being pulled inside and becoming a hostage himself, suddenly he's confronted by a second prisoner.
He came around that corner, I never did see him, and hit me with the leg irons in the head. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see the other one coming at me with the knife.
Abruptly, the inmates break off the fight and retreat back down the hallway. The sheriff maintains control of the door. The SWAT team arrives on the second floor, with the prisoners now restricted to the control room and the warden's office. The jail is quickly sealed off to the outside.
Here comes the sheriff, man.
Without hesitating, the sheriff follows the prisoners down the hallway, hoping he can resolve the situation face to face. Outside the warden's office, the sight of his wound seems to unnerve the hostage takers.
Go wash yourself up, bro.
Villar was the first one that walked up to the door and refused to speak to him because of the blood that was on his face.
The first thing he told me, he said he didn't want to talk to me. I said, why not? Look, let's talk, man. We can talk this out. And he says, no. He said, you gotta go get the blood off your face.
We don't want that to hell out.
With the authorities occupied in securing the jail, the prisoners begin placing a series of phone calls to the outside. The first call goes to a startled FBI agent, Joe Pisano, in nearby Lafayette.
We received the call about 10 minutes to 5. One of the inmates, he said that there was an uprising at the St. Martin Parish Jail. I knew that St. Martin Parish didn't have any negotiators, so the lady I spoke to said, well, if you're not doing anything, come on down.
We turn around and here's the FBI. How the hell did you get here? Well, the prisoners called us.
And we just explained to the sheriff that we understood that 4 of his people were taken hostage, and he had a situation that we'd like to help in any way we could.
I have to believe they got the FBI there because figuring concerned that maybe we went in with guns and would have killed them all.
The second call goes to a local television station, KLFY, also in nearby Lafayette. Johnny Ponte, one of the inmates in the control room, demands to talk to someone who speaks Spanish, and the phone is handed to anchorwoman Maria Placer.
Maria, habla Johnny Ponte.
And he said, my name is Johnny Ponte. I've taken over the jail in St. Martinville. And I said, what do you mean you've taken over? And he said, we have hostages. We want to get out. We don't care where they put us, but we want to go home.
Maria Placer's live report on the 5 o'clock news is the first public announcement of the takeover. It is 1 hour since the takeover began.
This is News Scan 10.
At the top of our news, there is a situation at the St. Martin Parish Jail, which we are trying to figure out at this time. As far as we know, there are some prisoners that have taken a couple of deputies in custody. At least 2 deputies are in custody that we know of in the control room.
The inmates' third call is to CNN in Atlanta. Unable to make themselves understood, they force a reluctant warden to take the phone.
We have been overrun by inmates.
I said, look, I'm Todd Louvier. I'm the warden here at the St. Martin Parish Correctional Center in Louisiana. I said, I'm being held hostage right now at knife point on my floor in the warden's office at the Correctional Center.
No, I am not playing a game.
Guy tells me, yeah, right. He just didn't believe what I was telling him.
A news crew, yes. There are demands. We have to have a news crew at St. Martinville. Thank you. They send a news.
The hostage takers' anxiety continues to rise as they fear an attack by the SWAT team is imminent. They order the warden to call his wife.
And don't forget to say goodbye.
But my wife had already seen it on the news, and she was very shaken up.
Hello? Yeah, it's me. Dad's there now?
My dad was at my house, but to hear your dad on the other end of the phone and saying, Dad. I love you, boy, take care. He really wouldn't show his affection towards us in that manner. That kind of hit you with a lump in your throat. I still feel that way right now talking about it.
I love you too, Dad.
I love you too, Dad. Ya, ese cabrón, ahora sí.
Ahora. Victory, man.
No te muevas.
They're gonna know we don't play no more. You hear us? This is Joe Pisano, FBI. You guys talked to me on the phone about 20 minutes or so ago. I'm down here at the prison now.
Yeah.
When FBI agent Joe Pisano learns the inmates want a television crew for a live telecast on the 10 o'clock news, he uses the opportunity to start a negotiation process with the inmates.
And we'll work something out.
You got to give me something in return. It's a two-way street. What are you going to do for me?
We called into control room and we spoke to Johnny Ponte. His initial demand was to have the news media present their story, and in exchange for that, he was willing to release 2 correctional officers.
That's the deal, take it or leave it.
How do I know I can trust you?
I don't trust you, you don't trust me.
Right now, I'm all you got. And if you want to try to get back to Cuba in one piece instead of getting back in a box, which is what everybody else out there wants, I'm the only card you can play.
We're not playing, man.
We'll get back to you and see if we can't get something done.
If not, they come out in body bags.
The deal is made. In exchange for live camera coverage, the inmates agree to release 2 hostages. All of the hostage takers appear to be foreign nationals. They claim to be illegally detained by the INS after completing their prison sentences. They demand the INS release them from custody and send them to another country. As the camera rolls, the town of St. Martinville becomes another hostage to the drama developing at the prison.
Most of them had completed their sentences. They were being held, awaiting deportation, but the country would not receive them. Cuba would not take them back. We had a situation where they were caught in the middle. These were people who had a very legitimate right, and if they were Americans in the United States, they would have been free.
The hostages appear to be unharmed. The prisoners have the initiative and control of the situation as viewers watch Johnny Ponte release the first hostage from the control room.
In exchange for airing the newscast, Johnny Ponte released Officer Wilkes. The agreement was that he would release, once it was played, he would release a second hostage, Brandon Boudreaux. However, he changed his mind.
Hey, Johnny, the clock's ticking. Where's my second hostage?
You got your man.
I kept my end of the deal. Now, where's my second hostage?
We not give him up.
The sheriff and Pisano are furious. A fragile trust has been violated, and they fear the hostage takers can't be trusted.
You're lucky you got one, man.
You're going to have to start keeping your word, because right now we're worse off than when we started. So
you do what we say or the man is dead.
But with 3 hostages still at risk, there is nothing they can do but remain calm and wait.
A standoff continues in St. Martinville, where 5 Cuban detainees have been holding 3 sheriff's deputies hostage for more than 24 hours.
Fortunately, by mid-morning, the second-floor hallway is empty. The sheriff orders his men not to enter the corridor. He is determined to keep the inmates' anxiety level to a minimum. Outside, as reinforcements arrive, the prison is becoming an armed fortress.
This is Newscan 10. The news is the same, frustrating, even painful to hear.
Negotiations are continuing. There's no new developments.
Although they failed to release the second hostage as promised, the hostage takers are showing no signs of violence to their captives.
The threats we were hearing were in fact defensive threats, not offensive. The threats were, if you come in, we will do this, this, and this. Different from an offensive threat where if you don't give me something by a certain time, this will happen.
Then, in a bizarre turn of events which no one could have predicted, the situation takes a turn for the worse.
Good morning.
A radio talk show telephones the inmates in the control room and conducts a live radio interview. This unauthorized interview seems to energize the inmates.
Put us in a parish prison after we have served federal time in the United States of America.
The negotiators are stunned. It is a hostage negotiator's worst nightmare. The hostage takers are the media stars, and as long as the inmates have an audience, they don't need to negotiate.
This is the only way that we can prove our point, then we'll do it.
In these situations, law enforcement wants to be the singular point of contact with the hostage takers, and there are reasons for that. There's a real need to provide the media and the people in the community with information about what's going on, but there's also a need to make sure that that information doesn't disrupt the negotiations and the dialogue.
Then, Johnny Ponte takes the phone and he delivers an ultimatum that hits St. Martinville like a bombshell.
When 72 hours is up, if they do not give us none of what we're asking for, we are willing to die. We know they're going to kill us, so we're going to take the deputies with us too. We are not dying alone.
So you're saying that if in 72 hours they have not met your demands, you're going to kill not only the deputies and the warden, but yourselves as well?
We won't have to kill ourselves. They'll do that for us.
Now, under a 72-hour deadline, the negotiators have questions but no answers. Are the inmates serious about their threat? And how can the task force regain control of the negotiating process?
We could certainly understand their argument that they have served their time, but we continue to remind them that the powers to be, the decision makers, would not negotiate at knife point. And if anything happened to any of the hostages, the decision to either return them to Cuba or to release them would be adversely affected by it.
Charles Matthews, regional FBI chief for Louisiana, and Neil Pertel, a senior negotiator from the FBI's National Critical Incidents Response Group, are part of the leadership that will coordinate the task force that is made up of local, state, and federal law agencies. SURG's involvement underscores the severity of the situation.
We have a critical incident response group that has been formed in the FBI in the last 7 or 8 years, which are agents and support employees who are trained specifically to address these types of situations. In concurrence with the director and the attorney general, we agreed that the critical incident response group would be valuable in St. Martinsville.
The task force is reorganized under FBI direction. It is not an auspicious start. Immediate concerns arise among the other agencies that SURG will act on its own to resolve the crisis.
The FBI came in, and I guess one of the fears of a local, I'll say a sheriff in this case, was that here comes the FBI, here comes Ruby Ridge, here comes Waco, horror stories, horror stories.
In Waco, you had a situation where David Koresh and his followers basically only had one demand of the government, and that's to go away, leave us alone. We've had, in that case, federal officers from the ATF who were killed. There was a situation that needed to be resolved and a legal process that needed to take place. In St. Martinsville, quite a contrast, the inmates there were holding hostages for the sole purpose of facilitating a demand. They wanted to get out of prison and go back to Cuba. As negotiators, as a responding law enforcement agency, we're in a position to bargain with people like that.
If negotiations fail, the hostage rescue team is ready to make an assault on a moment's notice. But to avoid any miscommunication, as long as negotiations continue, the tactical teams will confer with the rest of the task force on a regular basis.
It's important for us to talk to the negotiators on a daily basis to know what they're talking to the subjects about, what kind of issues they think may make the subjects more violent, what kind of issues they think might calm the subjects down. We need to have a sense of flavor of the entire operation, not just from a tactical standpoint, but also from the negotiation standpoint.
If your toolkit only has a hammer, then all of your problems have to look like nails. In relating that to a law enforcement situation, if the only skills you have, if the only tactics you have available to you are tactical, then your toolkit only has a hammer. Negotiations gives you another tool.
The situation is a stalemate. The Cubans can communicate with each other by radio and move freely through the hallway between rooms. The hostages are safe for the moment.
It could change if we made a mistake. It could change if we decided to assault.
The hostage rescue team informs Special Agent Matthews that a full-scale tactical assault will require cutting through the glass windows in both rooms before reaching the captured guards.
If we use explosives, chainsaws maybe, 5 minutes.
We got tactical options available to us down the road. I mean, those options aren't going to go away, so if we got the time to stick with the game plan, it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but I think it'll work.
Excellent. What is our...
Matthews is convinced the inmates want another way out other than violence. He directs the negotiations to continue.
Right now...
Preparing for any eventuality, Matthews orders the hostage rescue teams to begin rehearsing for an assault. SURG technicians install state-of-the-art listening devices inside the warden's office and control room. The ability to overhear the inmates and hostages converse will become crucial in determining their intentions and state of mind.
The priority always in a hostage-taking situation is the safe release of the hostages first, and then the safety of all others, law enforcement and the hostage takers. We're dealing with people that actually had something to gain, and what they were attempting to gain was their freedom.
Upstairs, the task force controls the kitchen area, seen here in green. Two factions of inmates hold hostages inside the control room and the warden's office, seen in red. The other cell blocks are in the white areas, which are directed from the control room.
Sheriff?
The task force identifies at least 8 hostage takers. Each inmate's record is examined to determine their potential for violence to the hostages, as well as their possible willingness to negotiate.
These are the suspects, sir. We have identified the leaders, we believe are the leaders, and the most dangerous guys here. This is Juan Miranda Salat.
Juan Miranda has a history of violent crime. He is seen as a leader, but his violent past makes him an intimidating presence to hostage takers and hostages alike.
He's the one that's kind of pulling the chain.
We determined quickly that Miranda played a part in the decision-making. Although Miranda was in a separate room in the warden's office, he was calling many of the shots.
This guy here, Johnny Ponte,
Johnny Ponte is the most volatile. It is Ponte who struck the sheriff with leg irons and broke his promise to release the second hostage. Ponte is viewed as emotional and unreliable.
Johnny Ponte was very emotional. Johnny Ponte screamed, yelled, rant and raved, waved the knife. He continued that type of activity for at least 2 days.
his buddy, a guy named Roberto Villar.
Roberto Villar is a known force among the inmates. Pisano feels he will not be open to negotiation because of his own legal situation.
Villar was not in the same situation as Miranda and I believe Johnny Ponte, because they had served their sentence. Villar still had a sentence yet to be served.
The negotiators' focus falls on Mario Mora, one of the inmates in the control room.
Gloria and Joe have been talking a lot to Mora. We feel he's reasonable.
We could talk to him. He wasn't operating through emotions as Johnny Ponte or Miranda, where Mario Mora was sort of our voice of reason.
Orta is the final one. He's got 3 murders under his belt that we know about.
Finally, there is Lazaro Orta. He doesn't participate in negotiations, but his presence is a constant threat to the safety of the hostages. There are 3 other hostage takers. One is Jorge Ramirez, a Cuban national. Although not believed to have taken part in the initial attack, Ramirez joined the other inmates earlier that morning in the warden's office. The other hostage taker in the warden's office is Anthony Duveau. He is believed to be from the Bahamas, but claims citizenship from the Dominican Republic. Duveau is the inmate who first called the FBI. Inside the control room is another Cuban, Geraldo Santana, who also has a history of violence. SURG officials begin methodically applying time-tested negotiation tactics to the hostage crisis. The first rule is to listen, no matter how difficult it gets.
These are people who were inmates a few days earlier. Now that they're empowered, they have control because they're holding hostages.
Listening loud and clear.
Look, Mr. FBI guy, I don't care who the hell you are. I want my boss and I want my plane out of Cuba. Coño, I'm tired of this bullshit.
Later that night, tensions among the task force escalate. When a SURG hostage rescue team relieves a local SWAT team, rumors fly. Late Tuesday evening, the sheriff hears that a SURG assault is imminent.
I said, let me tell you something, gentlemen. I said, you coming in here, and I said, if this thing works out all right, everybody's gonna be a hero. You're gonna leave here, you're gonna be doing a great job, you know. But I said, if something goes wrong and somebody gets killed, I have to live in this community. You know, I'm telling you, there will be nothing done without my knowledge and without my consent, because this is my jail.
But the sheriff and the task force realize that unless the situation improves, with less than 60 hours left until the hostages are killed, the use of force is an option whose time is fast approaching. By Wednesday night, inside the warden's office, the hostage-taker's mood has changed from exhilaration to desperation. But the challenge negotiators face in starting meaningful talks is not knowing who to talk to.
The inmates chose to speak to us over a speakerphone. So the negotiator would often be simultaneously conversing with 3, 4, or more inmates, and each would make an outburst or engage in an argumentative approach that would try to be one-upped by the next inmate.
That was one of the problems, and I think why it took so long. We had various people come forward and then drop back. Juan Miranda, Johnny Ponte were people that were very vocal, but being vocal doesn't mean you're a spokesperson.
It is obvious to the negotiators that the hostage-takers are disorganized. With no clear leader among the inmates, the task force must create one, but it will take time, and time is running out.
It's hard for people to understand, but these inmates aren't necessarily products of a great democratic experience. It's not like they're having a committee meeting and determining what they want to do and what they'll settle for and what they won't. A lot of what they're doing is moment by moment. It's very much based on how they feel at the time, how emotionally angry they are.
The hostage-takers want to leave the country, but no country will take them. While the State Department attempts to open channels with Cuba, returning to Cuba is not an option. As hours go by, the inmates' demands become more erratic and change constantly.
As the negotiations went on, they were asking to be sent to Libya, to Cuba, to some other foreign country.
If you're a Cuban, obviously people think you must want to go back to Cuba. They did not want to go back to Cuba as a group. They wanted to go somewhere other than St. Martinsville jail.
They wanted out of the United States. They wanted to go to Libya and meet Omar Gaddafi.
They were looking for a hole to be knocked in the wall and a bus to be brought up.
I remember one of the inmates, and I wish I could recall his name, said he wanted to go to a foreign country like Hawaii.
As negotiations continue, the prisoner's emotional state in the warden's office deteriorates.
You're not saying nothing to us. How many days have we been in this hellhole?
With Johnny Ponte and the other inmates, there came times when they were extremely threatening and would try to create deadlines. They wanted something to happen.
Who's running this show?
Oftentimes, Ponte, Villar, or Miranda could carry on for hours, but the agents could not lose focus on their primary objective, the safe release of the hostages.
And we would all reinforce his confidence, giving him eye looks, hand signs, and things are going well. Don't let it bother you. And of course, a professional won't be intimidated by that.
You had the ball rolling a little bit faster, you would have got both you guys.
He'll listen and allow the person to vent.
Give us our demand.
And if we allow that person to vent, there'll come a point where we can discuss things on a rational basis.
We'll kill these motherfuckers. Listen to us.
By now, the frustration level inside the warden's office is unbearable for everyone. The hostage-takers feel they aren't being heard, and the warden is frustrated at the lack of progress as well. When he takes the phone, his frustration is hard to hide.
When I talked to the negotiators, with some of them I felt that we made a lot of progress or headway. With others, it seemed to diminish all the headway we had made with the previous one when they'd swap out. It's like we were back to step one.
And every time you make an agreement and then you go back on it, somebody gets knocked around up here.
Todd comes from a tactical background. He's not negotiation trained, and he didn't realize the method to our madness. Todd became kind of anxious and maybe a little angry.
And I even told one of them, I asked his name.
Who are you? Yes, what is your name?
He said, why you want to know that?
Because when I get out of here, I'm going to slap the piss out of you.
And I really meant that.
In an unexpected move, the inmates take 5 female prisoners from cell block A into the warden's office. With 5 more hostages under their control, the hostage-takers increase the pressure as the deadline approaches.
The females that were in my office were scared to death from the start. The Cubans lined them up against the bookshelf. They were telling the negotiators and they were telling the females the reason they got them out of A block was to protect them, because they were trying to save them from getting raped by the other inmates in the facility. But this was not the case at all.
There are now 13 people crammed into the warden's tiny office. With the deadline less than 36 hours away, the warden is a captive audience for Lazaro Orta, a convicted killer who alternates between reading the Bible and recounting chilling descriptions of the murders he committed.
Every day we were in my office, he sat on the side of me and talked about different things, and a lot of his time was spent reading the Bible. He was in jail for murder. He explained to me exactly how everything went down. He said, it's not just one person I killed. He said, I actually killed 3.
Killing 3 people don't mean nothing to me, man.
And he explained to me in graphic detail exactly how he killed them, exactly where he stabbed them at. He said, I'll never fight with a person and stab him in the chest. He said, that's how people stab that don't know how to use a knife. Where I stab is right here. He said, it's always right here. I said, why right there? He said, because when you stab right here, you cut the jugular vein. And he said, once you cut that, it's gonna be inside the body and you can't stop the bleeding.
It's better they go there than I go there.
And yet this guy would sit down and read the Bible every night.
The warden maintains his composure, but silently vows that if something doesn't happen soon, he will take matters into his own hands. Early the following morning, the warden decides he's had enough. Frustrated with the negotiating process, he creates a disturbance, hoping to trigger a hostage rescue team attack.
Wednesday night late or early Thursday morning, I was super frustrated because the SWAT team didn't come in like I thought they were coming. I saw my chance, so I was gonna make them come. And knocked the piss out of Roberto Villar. They jumped on me, all 6 of them. Kicking, hitting, punching.
The warden's attack fails to generate a SWAT response. He's beaten severely, and the inmates leave him hogtied for the next 18 hours.
I'm gonna kill that bitch.
With 24 hours left until the deadline, the FBI's attention turns to the inmate faction in the control room. The task force believes Mario Mora is ready to surrender and bring both Santiago and the hostage, Deputy Boudreaux, with him. But not as long as Johnny Ponte is in the room.
Johnny and Miranda decided they were going to take a shower in A block. There was no females in there at the time, and they had access to the shower.
When Ponte leaves the control room, Pisano makes his
You're not
move.
giving me anything. Joe, I don't want to kill nobody, Joe. I don't want to kill this deputy I got right here. I don't want to kill him.
We attempted to build up Mario Mora because he was basically the voice of reason in the control room. We could talk to him.
Let me tell you, the first thing you said there about not killing anybody, that's the smartest thing you said, and that's why I'm working with you and not Ponte and those guys.
He wasn't operating through emotions as Johnny Ponte or Miranda were.
So look, this is a moment of truth. Are you there, Mario?
Calma. Joe.
Can I count on you? Yes or no?
Okay, Joe. Okay. Better not double cross with me.
Ponte and Miranda become enraged as they return from the showers to find the control room empty.
They noticed nobody was in the control room. When they noticed that, they walked up to the window, they looked inside, then they were freaking out. They were very agitated.
2 Cubans holding hostages in the St. Martin Parish Jail have surrendered and released 1 hostage. This is the first significant development since the release of Deputy Mac Wills late Monday night.
SWAT teams quickly occupy the control room and hallway. Attempting to press home his advantage, Agent Matthews adds pressure in a calculated show of force.
We put 2 of our tactical agents in view of the warden's office, just to demonstrate that we are in control and that we were providing a degree of recognition of our presence to the hostage takers. In response to that, they demanded they be removed. In order to underscore that, they brought 2 of the hostages to the window so we could observe them through the window and threatened them, holding a knife to them and pushing their face into the window.
Put me against the window, beat me on the window, and I felt a prick on each side of my neck.
When the subjects start threatening to kill a hostage, banging a hostage's head against the glass window, those are times when, as an operator, your attention level is up. You're on your toes, your adrenaline's pumping, you're ready to go.
Moving back. Come on.
Keep going back.
In the face of the inmates' threats to harm the warden, the two tactical agents withdraw. But now it is uncertain whether the warden is going to be harmed. With the safety of the hostages in question, Matthews faces a difficult decision.
At that moment, there was a determination had to be made whether or not an emergency assault was called for.
Matthews passes the word to the hostage rescue teams. If the warden is not heard on the listening device within the next 3 minutes, he will be assumed to be dead or injured, and a full-scale assault will be made on the warden's office.
I was most interested to hear whether or not the warden was still speaking, whether or not we could determine if he was injured or not.
We can tell you that about 10 minutes ago, a stretcher was sent up to the jail through the...
Outside the jail, the signs of an impending attack are reported by the media. As the seconds tick away with no sound from the warden, the SWAT teams prepare their attack. The main concern is getting to the hostages before the inmates can kill them.
This is crazy.
The warden's talking.
He's talking.
We could hear him speak, and we could tell that he had not been cut, and that very critical moment passed.
Certain they're going to die at the hands of SWAT, the inmates devise a deadly version of spin the bottle.
Man, we gotta show them we mean business.
What you want to do and say?
What? Have to kill somebody.
They lined us all up. Threw a bottle on the floor.
Yes, sir. Spin it. Spin it. Yeah.
And whoever the bottle landed on was be the first one they can kill.
The bottle lands on a female hostage. But Roberto Villar decides that he, not the bottle, will determine who dies tonight. As the warden comes face to face with the fury of the inmate's murderous rage, for the first time since he was taken prisoner, Todd Louviere realizes he's going to die.
Te voy a matar. I'm going to kill you.
With less than 24 hours remaining before the inmate's deadline to kill the hostages, Warden Louviere is out of time. Staring into the faces of these violent, desperate men, Todd Louviere shows no fear.
To kill me, what good could you possibly do to kill me? Let me tell you what, it just might make me feel better. This is crazy.
Instead, without thinking about it, he begins to talk about the one thing he values most, his family.
Look, I got a wife and 2 children. Surely some of you got some kids. You know what I'm talking about.
I spoke about my wife, I spoke about my 2 kids, and I asked them why they wanted to kill me.
Suddenly, one of the quieter hostage takers comes forward in the warden's defense.
I've got a wife and 2 daughters.
George Ramirez was in here, he has a family. The main reason he was involved, from what he said, was to get back to his family, to get out of INS custody. He has a couple of daughters. I have 2 daughters, which probably hit him pretty hard.
Jorge Ramirez tells Villar and Ponte that he has no intention of shedding blood to prove his point.
No, you stupid punk! You are right! This is not the plan, man! You know what you're doing, man!
We got it very heated, and they ended up getting in a fight because he didn't want to see nobody be killed.
We will all die if you kill one person. It's a death warrant.
The warden's life hangs in the balance.
We're still gonna get you though, man. You ain't got out of it yet. You just say for now.
There are only 12 hours left until the deadline. Negotiations are stalled.
Man, he's still out there, bro. What are we gonna do?
The task force is out of options. Preparations for an assault on the warden's office are finalized. The teams move into position for the attack. Then, an unexpected breakthrough from Washington. Reports that Cuba has agreed to repatriate all Cuban inmates.
We were informed that a decision had been made to allow a number of the inmates to go to Cuba. So we had this information, we simply sat on it until the moment was right.
Inside the small room, the inmates are exhausted. Their solidarity is splintering. And then, Roberto Villar's mother arrives in St. Martinville and requests to speak to her son. In a last-ditch effort to avoid bloodshed, Serg allows her inside the jail for a face-to-face meeting they hope will end the standoff. Special Agent Gloria Newport and a female chaplain accompany Villar's mother as she walks down the hallway to see her son. The women know that if the inmates don't surrender soon, the task force will have no choice but to attack.
Mamá. Hola, hijo.
Mrs. VR basically scolded her son and the rest of the inmates and told them that they should act like men and do the proper thing and release the hostages and come out.
¿Qué haces aquí?
She pointed at her son and the other inmates and said, "You're all my boys, you're all my children, you must come out." And in fact, at one point she pointed and said, "You're not a man if you don't come out." That's a strong message.
Adiós, mis hijos.
Seeing that the hostage takers' resolve is fading, CERG negotiators decide it's time to play their final card.
Vámonos.
Gloria Newport tells the inmates that the State Department and Cuba have agreed to a deal where Cuba will accept the Cuban inmates back into their country.
What's the plan?
We'll have a bus waiting for you, get on a plane, and you can go to Cuba.
The hostage takers are clearly skeptical.
We don't believe you.
Just trust in
How can we be sure nothing's going to happen to us when we go
They are
out
convinced
back?
snipers will pick them off the moment they exit the warden's office.
on a plane and going to Cuba. They're ready to take you. Don't harm the hostages.
Gloria Newport reassures the inmates they will not be harmed, and the surrender process begins. But only seconds away from a peaceful resolution, the prisoners make one final demand.
They demanded that the first person be given a two-way radio, and once he arrived at the bus, that he would call back to his fellow inmates to let them know that he was okay and that he was safe.
CERG agrees, and it seems the crisis is over. Jorge Ramirez is the first hostage taker to leave the warden's office. He is given the all-important two-way radio, and then he begins his walk through the waiting squads of HRT agents.
Stop. Put your hands on your head. Put them on your head and lock your fingers.
Now we wait.
Make any sudden move. Move. Keep walking. Stop right there.
He gets downstairs to the bus that will carry them to the plane. They take the radio away from him.
The hostage takers wait for Ramirez to signal that he's made it, that law enforcement has held up its part of the deal. Minutes pass, and he doesn't report back.
Ramirez! Ramirez!
The task force does not know that a simple breakdown in communications threatens to undo the entire surrender. Inside the warden's office, the inmates anxiously wait for a message from Ramirez that everything is good, but all they hear is silence. The inmates repeatedly call Jorge Ramirez on the radio to see if he made it to the bus. Unbeknownst to them and to everyone else, an HRT member has mistakenly confiscated the radio from a protesting Ramirez.
Ramirez! Man, this better not be no double cross.
Well, hey, this guy needs that radio to be able to call upstairs and tell him he's all right.
If he didn't refer back the information that everything was okay, they were gonna still kill one of us.
As seconds tick by, the deal threatens to unravel.
And finally, they get word downstairs, hey, give the man the radio, and he calls up and says, hey, everything's all right.
The inmates celebrate their imminent release to Cuba, but the warden is worried. The hostage takers are still armed, and 7 hostages remain at risk.
I told the guys, HRT's right outside the window, they all got loaded automatics. I said, how y'all gonna walk out with those weapons? You don't think if you walk out with a weapon that they're gonna mow you down right there, kill you? And they gave them up, and I locked them up in my closet.
As the surrender proceeds, each inmate and hostage is carefully searched and then escorted from the jail. After 6 days of being held prisoner in his own jail, the warden is the last to leave.
And I made it a point to be the last one to walk out of here. I was the first one taken in. I wanted to be the last one to get out.
Of the hostage situation coming to an end, what you see there is Warden Todd Louviere.
You look for any resolution short of violence. So success is everyone going home.
Only 5 inmates are eventually returned to Cuba. Roberto Villar is held on unrelated state charges and is currently serving 55 years for attempted first-degree murder. Anthony DeVoe is refused entry to Cuba, and later convicted of aggravated kidnapping. He remains incarcerated in the St. Martinville Parish Correctional Center. For Todd Louviere and the town of St. Martinville, life is back to normal.
If you don't forgive, what you can do, live the rest of your life planning on being vengeful to the person that you can't forgive? I mean, that's not what life's all about. I'll say this, and it's a saying from one of our greatest presidents, President Kennedy. Forgive your enemies, forget not their names.